The true culprit behind this chronic, soul-crushing frustration is not merely the specific woman who discarded you, but the pervasive Hollywood romance syndrome that has committed a brutal, calculated crime against your primal instinct. You've been lied to your entire life. Modern American culture, heavily saturated with post-feminist discourse and the pacifying narratives of the participation trophy generation, has conditioned you to believe the absolute falsehood that female desire operates on the logic of moral gratitude. You were taught that unrestricted availability generates organic attraction, that being the ultimate nice guy is the finish line of human mating. But the central thesis you must swallow today is significantly more acidic. Your free, constant, and unearned attention is the most glaring biological proof that you have zero options and exceedingly low social utility. By making yourself perpetually accessible, you transformed yourself into the behavioral equivalent of public transit Wi-Fi. Think about this structurally. Everyone connects to the public signal at a bus station because it is easy, wide open, and demands absolutely no effort or credential to access. But absolutely no one trusts that same open network to conduct the most vital, high-stakes transactions of their lives. You are entirely too accessible. If everyone, including her, has immediate, frictionless access to your time and emotional bandwidth, your perceived value instantly plummets in her subconscious. Brother, answer me with brutal honesty. How many times have you suffocated your own pride, stared at your screen, and sent just one more message, only to be met with calculated distance and chilling coldness hours later? I know exactly how deeply that stings. Your overwhelming sense of injustice is completely valid. You are not morally wrong for feeling this void, or for attempting to execute what you believed was a noble strategy, but you must realize that the root cause of your continuous rejection is not your kindness, it is your catastrophic lack of calibration. What you are going to hear from this point forward is heavy, and it will dismantle the comfortable lies you use to shield your ego. I didn't learn this only from books in a sterile academic environment. I observed it, studied it, and verified it across hundreds of real-world cases. I am going to tell you exactly what polite society lacks the courage to say to your face, because they are terrified of offending modern moral sensibilities. If you do not immediately shut off this leaking tap of free validation, you will continue to be systematically humiliated in the modern dating market. Therefore, you must stay with me until the very last second of this analysis, because I am going to expose the exact biological switch that you unknowingly deactivated in her brain, and I will hand you the clinical protocol required to reactivate it. Tell me in the comments, have you ever made yourself smaller to keep someone who never truly chose you? I read everything. You genuinely believe that you are merely being a supportive, agreeable man, but in exactly 30 seconds, I am going to show you a clinical neuroscan of how her brain actually translates your excessive, uncalibrated affection. The answer is going to give you visceral disgust. The biological response that should turn your stomach is this. Your chronic behavior as the people pleaser was never once read by her primal instinct as a moral virtue, but rather as a genetic flaw of submission. As a woman deeply embedded in the study of evolutionary mechanics, I am not here to coddle your bruised ego or offer you the maternal comfort that keeps you weak. I am here to reveal that your chronic passivity, your absolute lack of assertive leadership, and your terrifying inability to enforce hard boundaries function as an absolute biological repellent for any viable, high-quality female. When you reply to her text message in 3 seconds flat and send that highly predictable, unimaginative "good morning" text every single day without fail, you are not building a foundation of romance. You are architecting a state of profound neurological boredom. Behavioral science explains this phenomenon flawlessly through the principle of unpredictable reward, extensively documented by neuroendocrinologists like Robert Sapolsky. In the human brain, dopamine, the exact hormone responsible for the sensation of desire, anticipation, and the motivation to hunt, can spike by up to 400% when faced with challenge, structural uncertainty, and the delayed gratification of anticipation. Female desire literally requires the oxygen of doubt in order to breathe. When you hand over the entirety of your time and emotional energy up front, effectively guaranteeing that you will always be waiting in the wings, you instantly flatline the attraction receptors in her limbic system. There is no mystery to solve, there is no structural tension to navigate, and consequently, there is absolutely zero chemical response. You actively extinguish your own sexual attractiveness by mutating into a guaranteed certainty. Absolute predictability is, and always will be, the ultimate cemetery of female desire. What the longitudinal behavioral data shows us regarding anticipatory dopamine is that constant, unearned emotional rewards generate a rapid and fatal habituation. Modern therapy culture has fed you the toxic narrative that uncalibrated male vulnerability and total transparency are the keys to a woman's heart. This is a catastrophic misinterpretation of human biology. By remaining perpetually available and constantly eager to share your every feeling, you assassinate the sexual tension and the baseline respect of the dynamic because you completely remove her evolutionary need to fight for your attention. Understand this law permanently. Organic, visceral attraction demands the heavy weight of friction. The true trigger of female desire is never the peaceful, frictionless security of a harmless man, but rather the presence of a man who functions like a loaded gun. Let me be clinically precise. We are not attracted to chaotic, uncontrolled violence, but our biological hardware is instinctively, magnetically hypnotized by the potential of controlled, restrained aggression. Her brain needs to feel, on a primal level, that you are a man possessing the absolute capacity to react, a man who maintains unbreakable boundaries, and a man who, under no circumstances, will ever beg for her affection if she violates your standards. A loaded gun resting quietly in a holster commands immediate respect and alters the entire atmospheric pressure of a room, precisely because the danger is present, entirely tamed, but fully prepared to act if the situation demands it. You, conversely, have voluntarily disassembled your weapon and handed her the bullets, just to prove how harmless and agreeable you are. Brother, look in the mirror and answer yourself. How on earth do you expect her to feel a single spark of sexual tension for a man she already knows will never stand his ground, who agrees with her every whim, and who presents absolutely zero danger of ever walking away? The concrete, irreversible consequence of continuing to operate as the eternal pacifier is the complete and utter annihilation of your masculine identity within the power dynamic of the relationship. Over the long term, your terrified refusal to impose strategic distance does not transform you into the ideal supportive partner. It morphs you into an asexual pet in her eyes. She might genuinely enjoy your company, she might highly value your reliable emotional labor, and she will absolutely use your sturdy shoulder to vent about the unpredictable, sovereign men who actually make her blood boil. But she will never, under any circumstances, desire you. Chemical attraction depends organically on the empty, echoing space of your absence to survive. If your presence on her chessboard is already 100% guaranteed, the game is functionally over, and you have lost. She desperately needs the cold, sovereign silence of your absence to feel the necessary baseline anxiety of potentially losing you, because without that specific structural anxiety, her biology will not even register your existence as a viable reproductive mate. To continue pouring your time into this bottomless abyss of infinite attention is to sign your own invisible castration order. You are accepting the role of a disposable background character, the forgettable man, while she safely guards her true primal passion for the man who doesn't lift a finger to blindly please her. But there is an evolutionary metric even more ruthless than the mechanics of dopamine. The exact algorithm her instinct uses to measure your social status is about to destroy everything you currently understand about modern chivalry. Brace yourself for the clinical reality. The brutal truth about chivalry that your conditioned mind ignores is that female hypergamy utilizes ancient, primitive mental shortcuts to instantaneously calculate your status. After years studying evolutionary psychology, what I am about to tell you will permanently alter how you view every single interaction with women. A man's true value in the dating market is measured almost exclusively by his biological capacity to not require external validation. This is not cheap, motivational self-help. This is a non-negotiable evolutionary fact. According to the foundational studies in evolutionary psychology, rooted in the work of researchers like David Buss, the female brain evaluates men who demonstrate excessively high, immediate availability as males possessing exceedingly low survival and market value. When you miraculously always have free time for her, when you rearrange your life schedule with zero friction, and when you reply to her texts before the screen even dims, her biology does not romantically whisper that you are deeply in love. Her biology screams that you are not important enough to have a single other demanding pursuit in your own world. Imagine walking past a restaurant with a stunning, luxurious facade, but it is completely, eerily empty at 8 o'clock on a Saturday night. Your brain assumes, in a fraction of a second, that the food is toxic, or that there is something fundamentally rotten inside, simply because the rest of the market has clearly rejected it. Your overwhelming excess of unearned attention exudes this exact, unmistakable scent of social scarcity. You are broadcasting a dangerous lack of demand from other viable females, which instantly activates a profound, instinctive repulsion within her limbic system. This mechanism is exactly why the man who genuinely, structurally does not need female approval is the man who effortlessly commands the entirety of the power dynamic. The mechanics of emotional detachment, what the Stoics like Marcus Aurelius would recognize as true internal mastery, work flawlessly because attraction is an unconscious, uncontrollable biological response to the structural strength of an individual. A woman is constantly, subconsciously testing her environment to locate an emotional anchor, a man who remains perfectly still, centered, and unshakable in his own sovereignty, while the chaos and the emotional storms of life rage around him. When you emotionally disintegrate because she left you on red, or when you eagerly abandon your own plans just to secure a brief moment of her time, you instantly destroy your function as that anchor. You cease to be the mountain and become just another piece of debris being violently dragged down the river by her current. You only need to observe the real world to verify this. The men you judge the most harshly, the men who refuse to chase, who maintain their masculine frame, and who impose a distance that borders on arrogant stillness, are the exact same men who are taking these women to bed. This is not dark magic, and it is certainly not divine injustice. It is biology, flawlessly reading the undeniable social proof of abundance and sovereign detachment. Be brutally honest with your own reflection for 1 second. When was the last time you took action rooted entirely in your own non-negotiable value, rather than acting purely out of a paralyzing fear of losing her? This instinctive repulsion she feels toward your continuous weakness is almost always politely masked by gentle, socially acceptable phrases like, "I'm just not ready for a relationship right now." Her instinctive repulsion does not stem from malice or cruelty, but from the undeniable fact that her hypergamic radar detected a massive behavioral fraud in your excessively accommodating actions. Your rational, sovereign distance must immediately become your primary armor, because true, unshakable scarcity is the only language of respect that her limbic system has been evolutionarily molded to understand and organically revere. But the abyss of your self-sabotaging behavior hides roots that are significantly darker than mere availability. You still devoutly believe that your constant favors, your bought dinners, and your omnipresent support are the ethical demonstrations of a superior moral character. But there is a flaw even more humiliating than being the accessible, nice guy. It is a gross, systemic error you commit every single day, cleverly disguised under the noble banner of chivalry. Breathe deep, because we are going to tear down your favorite defense mechanism. The gross error you commit every day disguised as chivalry is, in clinical reality, the absolute greatest proof of your internal cowardice. Brother, wake up. The time has come to completely, permanently retire your favorite role as the deeply misunderstood, victimized martyr, because you are not the poor, innocent casualty of this story. You are a highly disingenuous negotiator. When you deliver constant favors, financial treats, and infinite emotional support without demanding absolutely anything in return, you are not being a genuinely kind human being. You are intentionally triggering a massive manipulation alarm inside the female brain. She instantaneously perceives the hidden, covert price tag attached to your supposedly free attitude. You are operating exactly like that aggressive windshield washer at the red light who sprays dirty water on your car without your permission, flashes a forced, theatrical smile, and then deeply obligates you by demanding a coin for a favor you never actually requested. You are executing a campaign of emotional bribery. You use your utility as a Trojan horse for your desire. Your deeply accommodating attitude is not true altruism. It is a weak, spineless bargaining tactic utilized by a man who lacks the courage to state his desires directly. Her primitive brain detects this invisible dishonesty perfectly and reacts with instantaneous repulsion, because she knows with absolute certainty that the man who pretends to want nothing is exactly the man who is going to viciously demand payment down the line. You meticulously set a behavioral trap, but the only person who fell into it and got locked inside was you. What your chronic victimization desperately attempts to hide is the ultimate behavioral secret that separates the men who survive from the men who are slaughtered in the modern sexual marketplace. Pay extremely close attention, because this is the absolute governing law of the real world. She does not love you because you are a good person. She respects you because you are strong, and without baseline respect, female romantic love is biologically, functionally impossible. This is precisely where the clinical cruelty of parental investment theory, validated by evolutionary biologist Robert Trivers in 1972, enters the equation. Females are evolutionarily hypersensitive to any structural asymmetry in initial courtship effort. When a man delivers his time, his hard-earned resources, and his absolute devotion prematurely, long before any actual sexual or structural commitment has been consummated, the woman's biology instinctively and permanently recategorizes him. He is immediately downgraded from a potential reproductive mate to a mere utilitarian provider. You are permanently relegated to the working class of her affection. You did not secure her burning love. You merely successfully negotiated the permission to serve her. Imagine that biological attraction operates through a series of heavy, fortified passageway doors. The common, agreeable man attempts to break these doors down by desperately shoving coins, flowers, and favors underneath the crack, praying that she will eventually take pity on him and turn the lock. The sovereign man, the man with his own world, pushes absolutely nothing. He positions himself silently in front of the door, fully aware of his own substantial weight, and it is the sheer gravitational pull of his unshakable presence that causes the lock to organically yield from the inside. By investing blindly in the dark to purchase her approval, you permanently jam the lock, throwing yourself voluntarily into a cold prison of chronic resentment, sentenced for the rest of your life to watch other men walk through that exact door without ever having to ask for permission. You can try to intellectualize your failure. You can attempt to justify your pathetic position by claiming that you were raised by a different generation to treat women like princesses, or you can comfortably blame the moral decay of modern dating culture for ruining the ethics of relationships. Stop lying to the mirror. The unbearable clinical truth is that you actively use your role as the good guy as a socially acceptable shield for your own terrifying lack of frame. You resort to emotional favors and financial pampering because, Deep down in the darkest corners of your psyche, you secretly do not believe you are masculine, dominant, or inherently valuable enough to generate magnetic organic attraction through your raw essence alone. Your excessive chivalry is nothing more than a subconscious, preemptive apology for not being the grounded, high-value man she actually traveled out into the world hoping to find. How much longer are you going to continue trying to purchase with expensive dinners and endless favors the exact same visceral desire that sovereign men extract entirely for free, armed with nothing but their posture, their frame, and their strategic scarcity? If you recognize that you have been operating as an emotional briber up until this exact moment, you must understand that the era of your victimhood ends today. There is only one possible, scientifically viable path forward from this point to permanently cleanse your masculine name in her eyes and in the face of the unforgiving fury of the real world. The only path to permanently cleansing your name does not begin with dramatic apologies or emotional declarations, but with the absolute, uncompromising termination of your free validation. I know the sheer weight of the clinical reality we just exposed is crushing, but I am not here to offer you the soothing maternal comfort that would guarantee your continued weakness. I am handing you the exact, verified topographical map out of the abyss. Starting today, the hardening of your character must not be a cheap, theatrical performance where you temporarily pretend to be detached to trick her. This must become the organic, natural expression of a man who has finally developed a non-negotiable internal standard, a consuming purpose, and an absolute, chilling awareness of his own value. Behavioral science empirically proves that hyper-focusing on your own personal ascension generates the exact strategic distance that transforms you into a biological prize. Men who are violently obsessed with their own mission maintain optimized levels of testosterone and incredibly low baseline levels of cortisol, precisely because they have successfully eliminated the pathological, biological stress of constantly hunting for external female validation. When you completely cease orbiting the lives of others, you immediately pull the biological trigger of pre-selection. Her hypergamy tracks this new, silent independence and computes, in fractions of a second, that you are now a male experiencing high demand, a man who absolutely does not need to beg for a drop of attention. Your focus must immediately become the most expensive, fiercely contested, and highly inaccessible resource in the entire dynamic of the relationship. To structurally sustain this newly forged positioning, the master rule is brutally simple. The truly sovereign man places absolutely 0 women above the trajectory of his own mission. This is not a demonstration of calculated, vindictive coldness, nor is it disguised resentment. It is the ultimate, highly honed instinct of masculine self-preservation. The real world, and women themselves, will ruthlessly, mercilessly punish the man who abandons his own center of gravity and sacrifices his own development just to beg for the fleeting approval of others. Your personal sovereignty must be erected as an impregnable fortress. I want you to envision a colossal structure of solid stone, surrounded by towering, unscalable walls that do not even tremble in the face of the freezing winds of rejection, guarded by massive, heavy iron gates that absolutely never open for anyone who lacks the proven merit to enter. Inside this impregnable fortress resides everything that actually matters: your life's objectives, your physical vitality, your intellectual expansion, and your financial ascension. No emotional intruder, no matter how physically beautiful, possesses the authorization to breach this space and derail your trajectory of excellence. If she wishes to enjoy the profound, grounded security of your walls and access the warmth of your attention, she is going to have to pay an exceptionally high entry fee in the currency of loyalty, absolute respect, and compliant behavior. Look at your own current reality right now with clinical coldness and answer me honestly. Have you actually built this impregnable fortress, Or is your mind still an unprotected, abandoned, vacant lot where any passing woman can casually wander in, set up camp, and destroy whatever she pleases without consequence? The definitive consolidation of your self-respect begins in the exact, irreversible moment that you permanently close the tap on your unlimited access. You must fundamentally comprehend that true, earth-shattering magnetism never arises from subservient, pleasing attitudes. It is born exclusively from the unbreakable structural tension of a man who absolutely, categorically refuses to be downgraded to the category of a household utility. Organic admiration only ever blossoms in the presence of high value, in the presence of an individual who carries the heavy, unmistakable weight of knowing exactly who he is and precisely where he is walking. When you finally become your own absolute priority, strategic distance ceases to be a manipulative technique you have to remember to apply. It simply becomes your default, natural state of being. This is exactly how the board flips, and how your baseline behavior aligns flawlessly with evolutionary biology. Carve this exact sentence into the deepest part of your mind, so you never forget the fundamental law of the biological game. Female desire is never requested, it's triggered. If what I just explained resonated, subscribe to this channel. What you heard today is only the entry point. Every week I go deeper into a layer most men will never see. Abandoning the pathetic posture of emotional bribery and finally accepting the heavy burden of your own value requires a terrifying amount of courage. But this is the only solid foundation that will prepare you for the brutal truth that concludes this journey. It is infinitely better to bleed out while accepting the freezing biological coldness of the real world than to continue living a numb, anesthetized existence fueled by the comfortable, toxic lies of modern romanticism. Starting today, your tolerance for any interpersonal dynamic that lacks organic, unprompted reciprocity must be adjusted to absolute zero. What you have just experienced in the last few minutes was not a mere motivational shock to reality. It was the heavy, visceral impact of the blindfold finally dropping, the brutal, non-negotiable clarity that completely dominates a man's mind the morning after the definitive destruction of all his most childish, comforting illusions. The biological game does not, and will never, reward blind, uncalibrated sacrifice. It only reveres value, frame, and strength. Kill the weak man you've been trained to become, the validation seeker who begs for scraps of affection, before he successfully destroys the entirety of your future. If you have stayed with me until this exact moment, you have already profoundly understood the ultimate reality. The problem was never her. It was the flawed, corrupted map you were using to navigate her biology. You are now standing at the precipice of two entirely irreversible options, and the choice of how you proceed is entirely yours. You can close this screen right now, retreat to your comfortable delusions, and go back to blindly investing your sweat, your irreplaceable time, and your hard-earned money into women whose limbic systems feel organic repulsion at your unending availability. You can choose to remain just another predictable, pathetic, and forgettable statistic of the modern dating market. Or you can choose to seize absolute control, forge your new masculine identity in the very fire of the rejection you just suffered, and permanently establish yourself as your own non-negotiable priority.